Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 355, Tuesday, February the 27th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have major news today, two really important news items that we'll be covering. But before I get into it, I just want to point out an excellent comment that was left on TowerGate day number 354 by Yakmaster. Yes, Yakmaster posted up a link there on TowerGate day number 354. If you're really interested in what's going on with this stuff regarding the Florida shooting and Sheriff Israel and all that, I highly recommend you take a look at the comment by Yakmaster on TowerGate day number 354. He provides a link there which shows this bizarre relationship between Roger Stone and Sheriff Israel. It's a very short read. It'll only take you a minute or so to read it, but it's an extraordinary little story, and I have to believe it's true. So if you're interested in this story, following the Sheriff Israel story, the Florida shooting story, and you're interested in Roger Stone, who seems to be everywhere all the time, if you're interested in that, definitely check out that link on TowerGate day number 354 from Yakmaster, and click on the link and read it. It's very interesting regarding the relationship association between Roger Stone and Sheriff Israel. Maybe I'll have a chance to comment on it tomorrow, but today we're just loaded up totally. Just no time. So let's go ahead and get to what we have for today. Okay, from Breitbart. We know now that the main source of the dossier was Johnathan Winer, Obama State Department official and close associate of the Clintons. Winer has now admitted to being a main source to Christopher Steele. Winer authored a Washington Post op-ed where he conceded that while he was working at the State Department, he exchanged documents and information with Christopher Steele. Also says that he shared information with Steele that had been passed to him by Hillary Clinton confidant Sidney Blumenthal, who Winer describes as an old friend. Winer stated that the info he received from Blumenthal came from Cody Shearer. Hillary, of course, Hillary's hatchet man, going back to the early 90s, when the Rotten Reverend Clinton was the First Lady. Shearer did the character assassinations of Bill Clinton's accusers while Hillary was running the bimbo eruption operations against her husband's accusers. Hillary's goons are the real sources of the dossier, and that was used to get the FISA warrants. But wait, there's more. From 2008 to 2013, Winer worked for APCO Worldwide. He was the senior vice president. APCO did pro bono work for the Clinton Global Initiative lobbying firm. FBI informant William Campbell, who just testified to 3 congressional committees, submitted a written statement to these committees that Russian firms had hired APCO to influence Obama administration and specifically Hillary Rotten Clinton. APCO did this by doing work for Tenex, the affiliate of Rosatom, the Russian state-owned uranium company. Tenex paid $3 million to APCO while Winer was vice president. You see, it's just as I said months ago. The Rotten Reverend Clinton operation and Steele didn't write any. The Rotten Reverend Clinton was essentially the source of everything. And Steele didn't write anything in the dossier. He was only the launderer of the intelligence. Someone who could give credibility to the lies that were peddled as intelligence. Someone who could get the lies to the FBI directly and other intel agencies, such as the CIA, British intelligence, etc. Attorney Mark Elias was also counsel for the Rotten Reverend Clinton, and Perkins Coie, attorney Mark Elias, also was the general counsel for the Hillary for America campaign. He is also the personal lawyer to John Podesta and the DNC. It was a Hillary operation in coordination with deep state actors in the FBI, CIA, DOJ. Soon, when the rest of the media catches up to us, this is the story they will tell, is that this is one of Hillary's frame-ups of Donald Trump. The dossier and the overall plot, and it was totally home cooking. There were no Russians. Have any of the Russians admitted to their involvement? No, nor will they. Okay, so let's sort this out. As you know, about a month and a half ago, Johnathan Winer came out and wrote this op-ed in the Washington Post, where he basically said, yeah, I was feeding Christopher Steele information from the State Department. I was also getting information from Blumenthal, who was getting it from Cody Shearer. And, of course, those are the Clintons' two inside people that have been with them back since the early days of the Clintons, even before they came to Washington, when they were still in Arkansas. So why did Johnathan Winer come out and admit in this op-ed, completely out of the blue, that he was a source to Christopher Steele for the dossier? And I would contend the primary source. Well, it's because of this. Someone in the Intelligence Committee, probably on the House Intelligence Committee, probably Peter Schiffhead, got wind of the fact that the Nunes investigation's second move was going to be looking at the State Department, probably because he got in some information and he knew about Winer. So even before Nunes came out and talked about moving to the second phase, looking into the State Department, where Johnathan Winer worked, even before that, we have Winer coming out and writing this op-ed. Now, for anybody who's been following the Clintons for years and years, like I have, you know this is classic Clintons. Somebody on that House Intelligence Committee, a Democrat, knowing good and well where Nunes was going to be going next, looking into the State Department after he finished looking into the FISA warrant, must have leaked to the Clintons that Nunes was going to be looking into the State Department, which at that point the Clintons would say, well, that means that he's going to get his nails into Winer and tie Winer back to us. That's going to come out. Well, what we have to do, classic Clintons, is when the Clintons know that there's some damaging information coming out about them, they will always get out there and drop it themselves before it can come a bombshell to be used against them. They will come out and drop it, so to lessen the effect that it will have. So there's no question in my mind whatsoever that someone leaked to the Clintons that Nunes was going to be looking into the State Department, would probably discover Johnathan Winer, so the Clintons had Winer write his op-ed and had the Washington Post publish it. So we knew several weeks back in advance about Winer. And but as we look more and more, just as I've been saying for a very long time, Christopher Steele was nothing more than the laundryman. He was the man who was cleaning the intelligence. We're going to find, when we get to this end of the investigation, that nearly everything that went to Christopher Steele came out of the inside of the Hillary Clinton universe. This entire thing was probably cooked up in Hillary's kitchen with Podesta and Blumenthal and other close associates of the Clintons, specifically Hillary. But now we learn that we are now seeing from the FBI informant William Campbell testifying that APCO, this lobbying firm, was being used by the Russians to get to the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton. And we find out now that it was Johnathan Winer, who was the VP of APCO at the time all this was going on. So now we've got Winer and the Clintons even more closely tied to APCO, and as William Campbell says, that they were joking about the fact that they had bought off the Obama administration through Hillary Clinton. So this story reveals to us, it confirms one thing that we already knew, which is that Johnathan Winer was a source. But in the article, he makes it sound like he was just like a source. But I'm telling you, he was a much, much bigger source than what anyone is wanting to talk about right now. But we're going to find out that he was the one that was probably getting all this stuff to Christopher Steele. Yet we still continue to hear that it came from Russians. Well, we know that they've already identified 4 of the 5 alleged sources of the dossier by name. We talk about them all the time. Mr. Milian, Tenevieve, and these other guys, we talk about them all the time. But not a single one of them has come out and stated that they were a source or confirmed any of that. 2 of them have flatly denied it. Why? Has Mueller interviewed them? Have they been subpoenaed by any of the committees? Are they refusing to testify? We don't hear very much about them. Everyone talks about them being the Russian sources, but they don't seem to want to be interviewed. They don't want to seem to be talking about it. There doesn't seem to be any other evidence other than Papadopoulos, and he's been proven to be a liar. And he was probably someone's plant as well. Probably the Clintons. Maybe he was working through Blumenthal. Maybe he was working through Downer. We don't really know. But what we do know is that we are finding out who some of the true sources were for this information. And more we find that they're people who come out of the Clinton universe, not from Russians. Where is the evidence that the Russians were the sources for the dossier? Other than what we're told by Papadopoulos, other than what appears in the dossier from Steele, there is none. They haven't admitted to it. They're not on record of that. They've never signed any sworn statements, never testified under oath, never done anything. So, again, as I said, I think that 90% of what appeared in the dossier was pumped in and fed to Christopher Steele. He even said that the information came to him. He didn't go out and get it. It came to him. He met with the FBI twice to give them information, but he says that he never went to Russia. He never spoke with the Russians directly. He used intermediaries. And who was the intermediaries? It appears now that we know for sure Johnathan Winer was a primary intermediary. Primary. Who else? There's not many other people out there that we're learning who's admitted to being a primary intermediary. Winer is the only guy that's come out and admitted to being a primary intermediary. Now, we can assume that that Nellie Orr or someone at Fusion GPS was also an intermediary because the information was flowing in another direction. It was flowing out of the DOJ, the NSA, the DOJ NSD, which was getting the information from the NSA database and feeding it probably back through Fusion GPS using Nellie Orr to get it to Christopher Steele. And maybe that ham radio is the way that they were communicating that information. Nellie Orr was probably using that ham radio to communicate to Christopher Steele, and that was probably Steele's idea. That's something the old spooks would do, is use a source like that. And that's not something Nellie Orr would have thought of, or probably even Fusion GPS, or Clinton, or anyone else. That's an old spy trick. So, this is incredible information, and I think as we move forward, we're going to continue to learn more and more, and I will be proven that what I said months and months ago, like in the first week that I was doing TowerGate videos, you know, I said, this looks like a Hillary Clinton operation. I've been watching these people for years. This is exactly the type of things that the Clintons do. And I think as we move farther and farther down the road, we're going to find that to be true, and that these Russians supposedly being the sources is just as loony as Russians hacking the DNC. There were no Russians hacking the DNC, and I don't think there was any Russian sources. And I think that we're going to find that out when we get to the bottom, that all these sources were coming directly out of the Clinton camp or out of the mix of Bruce and Nellie Orr, getting the information from the NSA, the database, and funneling from Fusion GPS, where Nellie was working, directly to Christopher Steele. All this information was being pumped in that direction. It was all going that direction. And then Christopher Steele would then essentially launder it, dress it up, put his name on it, and then pass it off to the FBI, the CIA, British intelligence, and anyone else who would look at it, including the media. That's what it looks like to me. The next story, hold on to your hats. The noose is tightening on BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed's attorneys have desperately tried, in vain, to force the DNC to produce evidence cited by CrowdStrike that Webzilla hacked the DNC on behalf of the Russians. The DNC has refused to turn over the data, and the judge in the case is signaling that he will not force any action by subpoena. More bad news for BuzzFeed. Mr. Gubarev's attorneys have turned over to the court Webzilla's entry logs on 13 internet protocols, as was requested by BuzzFeed's lawyers. And enforced by the court. The 13 internet protocols confirm that these IPs or any other XBT IP addresses were not involved in the DNC hack or had anything to do with the allegations made in the dossier. No Russian IPs exist in any Webzilla protocols. Case closed. BuzzFeed, pay up. And DNC, show us your servers. Will your IP protocols, what will they reveal? Soon, if we see those, we will learn who hacked up your server. Seth Rich. So, excuse me. So for those of you who are new to TowerGate and have not been following our TowerGate videos here, so you know what I'm talking about, I have been following the civil lawsuits in both the UK and in Florida. The civil suit in the UK is Mr. Gubarev versus Christopher Steele, and in Florida it is Mr. Gubarev versus BuzzFeed. Mr. Gubarev is the man who owns Webzilla. Webzilla is the company owned by Gubarev, who was alleged in the dossier to have been the company that actually performed the physical hacks of the DNC as ordered by Putin or his people. BuzzFeed published that dossier. Therefore, they were liable. So, Mr. Gubarev sued them. Initially, BuzzFeed came out and apologized and withdrew that accusation, but it was too late. They had already published the dossier, which made the claim that Mr. Gubarev's company, Webzilla, performed the hacks at the DNC on behalf of Russia. So that's why that libel suit occurred, as well as the suit that they filed against Christopher Steele, because he was allegedly the source of that information. So this case has been going on now for about 9 months. I've been covering the civil suit and versus Christopher Steele in London, and I've been covering the BuzzFeed case in Florida. So the last time that we talked about this story, BuzzFeed had tried to get the judge to force the DNC to release the findings of CrowdStrike, who did the analysis of the DNC server. It's CrowdStrike who was brought in by Mark Elias to analyze the DNC servers after they reported a hack, after they recorded the breach. CrowdStrike then produced a report saying it was the Russians, and that's how we got the Russians hacked the DNC narrative. But no one else has ever examined the DNC servers, nor has anyone had direct access to all the information that CrowdStrike pulled in order to make that judgment. Not even the FBI. So now BuzzFeed, finding himself in dire straits, losing the lawsuit, were needing to prove that the Russians hacked the DNC, and that if they could get access to CrowdStrike's findings and get access to the DNC servers, they would find the fingerprints of Mr. Gubarev's company, Webzilla, their operators, working on behalf of Russia. Of course, to that effect, they also wanted, BuzzFeed also wanted to see Mr. Gubarev's firm, Webzilla, wanted to see their files that were in question, their internet protocols that were in question. And Mr. Gubarev and his attorneys presented them to the court. All 13 of the internet protocols were requested, and they provided them. They were all analyzed, and they show absolutely no fingerprints anywhere of anything having to do with Webzilla doing any hacking of the DNC whatsoever. So we weren't able to get a look at the DNC servers, and have not, but now we have courtroom evidence of Webzilla producing their internet protocols, producing their information, which has now been evaluated and proven that there's nothing there. So it's just another way to look. If in fact Webzilla had done that, that information would likely have been found on their end. So we've now cleared that theory on the end, on Webzilla's end and Mr. Gubarev's company. We still haven't seen the DNC side, but if it's not on Webzilla's side, then it certainly won't be found on the DNC servers. It would be both places. You would see the fingerprints in both places. But we now know that the fingerprints are not there from Webzilla, Mr. Gubarev's company, which means they're not there on the DNC either. That's why the judge is not forcing as well as many other reasons, he's not going to force the DNC. BuzzFeed has just taken a huge hit. They were hoping they would find something on these as their people, because it was BuzzFeed's people who analyzed this the information turned over by Mr. Gubarev's attorneys of Webzilla's 13 protocols, which were requested by BuzzFeed, which is where they thought they'd find the evidence, but they found none. It was clean. Mr. Gubarev is clean. He's going to win this case, and it will probably now come to a close very quickly. It's been dragging on for a long time. The last-ditch effort was one of two things: either to get the access to the DNC servers and the report made by CrowdStrike, which would prove the claim of Gubarev's company, or to find it on Gubarev's own information, which they supplied. Of course, we know they found none. The other thing would be to flat out get Christopher Steele to walk in, sit down in the courtroom, go under oath, and swear to everything that's in the dossier, and then prove it. But Christopher Steele does not want to be interviewed by the attorneys for Mr. Gubarev or anyone else. He doesn't want to talk to anybody about any of this because he knows he can't prove a word of it. Can't prove a word of it. Major news. BuzzFeed is going down, which we knew. I've been saying for months and months they were going down. The only two shots they had was to either be able to prove that claim that they made. That would require finding the evidence on either the technical data from Webzilla or to find it on the DNC servers. They're not going to find it, obviously. Or they could have Christopher Steele come in and go under oath with all of his information and all of his stuff and come in and prove it himself. He won't do it, and he can't do it. It's over. Cheers. The rumor mill has it that Obama is working behind the scenes to become the next EU commissioner, head of the EU. That would be replacing Mr. Jean-Claude Juncker, who's in charge now. Juncker probably not going to walk away from that post very lightly. He'll have to go kicking and screaming. But Obama might be able to unseat him. So does it surprise anybody that Barack Hussein Obama wants to be the EU commissioner so he can inject a little Obamunism into the EU like they don't have enough already? CNN's Jake Tapper asked Sheriff Israel if there was a stand down. Was there a stand down order? Sheriff Israel dodged the question, would not answer. It's pretty obvious it was a stand down of some sort, either a policy, a rule, or someone over the radio. Don't go in. Somebody told those guys not to go in. 4 to 5 deputy sheriffs, they don't go in. No. Something's wrong. And Jake Tapper directly asked Sheriff Israel if there was a stand down. Won't answer the question. Dodged it. In the Florida case, the second Florida case now of Jared and Elizabeth Beck versus the DNC for cheating Bernie Sanders in the election is now using the First Amendment to defend their rigging of the primary. And basically, their lawyers gave a fairly lengthy opening statement, but I'll boil it down for you in about 2 paragraphs. Basically, the Democratic National Committee's defense for cheating Bernie is the following. The Democratic National Committee does not try to defend rigging. They accept they did the rigging that as the evidence shows. Instead, they're saying that just because donors and activists donate money and time to a candidate they prefer doesn't mean that the DNC has to nominate or consider the candidate preferred by the donors and the activists. They're basically saying, yeah, you can join the Democratic National Committee, you can join the Democrat Party, you can pay your dues, you can donate money, you can go work on campaigns, you can find your preferred candidate, you can go to work for them, your candidate can be winning this and that and the other thing, he can be winning in the polls, he can be doing this and doing that, but we at the DNC actually decide who the nominee is going to be. None of you donors or workers or anything else have anything to do with it. No matter what happens, at the end of the day, we're really going to be the guys who pick who's going to be the nominee. It has nothing to do with any of you guys out there working, donated money, or anything else. We get to make the final decision because it's a private club and it's our First Amendment right. Well, Jared and Elizabeth Beck, of course, the first suit got thrown out on a technicality at the end, and now they've refired their suit, trying to overcome the mistakes they made the first time, and they're still making a big mistake because they continue to file the case in Florida. They should be filing this case in Washington. But maybe they'll figure it out. Either way, sadly, the truth is, these DNC lawyers are correct. The two parties are private clubs. They can nominate anybody they want to. They're private clubs. They are not official part of the government. The election system is not part of the official government. There are FEC rules and regulations, but nowhere in the FEC rules and regulations does it say that either of the two political parties have to nominate someone because that's who the majority of the people in either of those two political parties want. See, we could have... Now, you know, it's dangerous, and if you do what the Democrats did by cheating Bernie to get Hillary, yes, you're going to face a lot of blowback, including civil suits. Now, the Republicans would have tried to do the same thing to Donald Trump, but the Republicans did not have the superdelegate situation like the Democrats have. The Democrats have all these superdelegates, 700 and some or whatever, which makes up about a third of the total votes, of the total delegates. They can give the 1/3 of the delegates to the guy they want, and that 99% of the time will defeat everyone else. The Republicans don't have superdelegates, so they have to do their cheating in another way, which they usually do at the convention, as they did to Ron Paul. They just simply don't recognize your delegates at the convention. They just simply say, how many delegates does Ron Paul have? 473? We're just not going to recognize them. The chair votes not to recognize. Bam! Arrest those people. I know. I was there. Okay. Let's see. Why doesn't Christopher Steele want to testify to anybody to clear his name? Why is the deep state, Mueller, the FBI, and others assisting Steele in avoiding testimony? Let me tell you why Christopher Steele does not want to testify. Let me tell you why he is getting assistance from the deep state, Mueller, the FBI, and just about everyone else. Why he's getting so much help and not being forced to testify, whether it's in the civil case or whether it's to Congress or whether it's for Mueller or anyone else. It is because Christopher Steele is going to be asked if he received information from the FBI, the CIA, the State Department, the Department of Justice, or anyone else within the government. That's a question he would be asked. And he doesn't want to answer that question because it brings down the house of cards on all of them. Christopher Steele, that's his card. That's the card he's playing. He knows he's got protection because he's basically saying, oh, you don't want me up there testifying, because if I have to go up and testify and they ask me this question, I can't lie. I'm not going to jail for you people. I got to tell the truth that I did get information pipelined to me directly from the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA, and actors working for them. I'll have to tell the truth. Christopher Steele's testimony will do much more damage to the FBI, the DOJ, the State Department than it will to him, and they know it. And let's look at one example of how we know this. Well, we know that Steele did receive intel from someone in the intel community, and how do we know that? Because Trump's lawyer was cited in the dossier, Michael Cohen. But it turned out to be another Michael Cohen, not Trump's Michael Cohen. That intel had to come from the NSA database. That intel came from the NSA database, and once proven that the FBI and the DOJ was funding Steele with this information, the scam is up for the whole cartel. This is why Steele does not want to testify and why the deep state is helping him avoid testimony, because he is going to be asked about that. They're looking very closely at that. We know that in the dossier it says that Michael Cohen traveled to Europe and had this meeting. That's what was in the dossier. But the problem is they got it wrong. Michael Cohen was never in Belarus or anywhere else in Europe in that year, or any year for that matter. I don't know if he's been to Europe, but I don't think he's ever been where they said he was. So, how did Christopher Steele get that information? Where did it come from? It had to come through the pipeline from the NSA database. And who gave it to him? Probably Nellie Orr. Probably Bruce Orr got access to the NSA database, 70217 query, got this information, said, ooh, Michael Cohen. He passed it on to his wife, Nellie, who got on her ham radio and called up Christopher Steele and said, okay, we got Michael Cohen, Trump's attorney, going to Europe, meeting with these Russians, and they put it in the dossier. Busted, because it turned out to be false. This is the question that Christopher Steele does not want to be asked. Did you receive, at any time during the time you were compiling the dossier, did you ever receive information through Bruce Orr, who he spoke with personally, Nellie Orr, who was working for Fusion GPS and had the ham radio, Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS, her employer? Did you get it from Brennan or one of his assets, or Comey, or some of those FBI guys who you met with 2 times in Rome, Italy? Someone, one of those people who had access to that NSA database, fed Christopher Steele that information, and that blows up their whole plot. It ties them into ties the deep state working with the Right Reverend Clinton into being participants in feeding Christopher Steele information in the dossier, which they then used to get the FISA warrant. They were involved in producing information that made its way into the dossier. They, being the FBI, the DOJ, NSD, the CIA probably, they're all guilty. This is all going to come out, my friends. They know this. Nunes, Grassley, the IG, the Inspector General, oh, he definitely knows it. Mike Rogers obviously knows it. Mike Rogers has probably got that exact query. He's probably got that FISA 70217 query. He's probably got it. He's got it. He's probably passed it on to the IG. He probably showed it to that FISA court judge Collier. They have got them red-handed. That is why Christopher Steele is being protected. That's why they're not forcing him to testify. That's why they're helping him to avoid testifying. And that's why he doesn't want to testify. And it's not so much that not only does he have to go incriminate himself for lying, but if he answers this question, if he doesn't answer it truthfully, he's going to jail for lying. If he answers it truthfully, he sucks the entire FBI, CIA, DOJ, NSD division, Nellie Orr, Bruce Orr, James Comey, McCabe, Stroke, a whole group of them get sucked in when he answers that question. Bam. It's curtains. There you go, my friends. Regarding the leak investigations that Jeff Sessions spoke about last week on Maria Bartiromo's show, 27 of them, he said, are happening. I just want you to know that the FBI is using polygraphs to find the leakers. They're polygraphing all these FBI agents to find out who the leaker was. When they find out, some of those people are going to jail. Trump has hit 50% in the Rasmussen likely voters poll. The Dems' opposition to the tax cuts was devastating. That's why Pelosi is in the process of being taken out by a Democrat coup led by a Democratic congressman named Tim Ryan. They are trying to take her down as we speak. And yes, I saw the story about the deputy saying he thought the shots came from outside the school. That is total bullshit. That is total bullshit. You could tell the big difference between a gunshot coming from inside of a building and a gunshot coming from outside. When you hear a gunshot outside, as any cop probably has, it's, as me and many other people, it's ricocheting, and bang, you hear reverberations over everywhere. You hear the report bouncing off walls, bouncing off this, bouncing off that. It's obvious it's an outside shot. A shot on the inside, it would all be muffled. It would all be very, very muffled. You wouldn't be getting all these reverberations and reports that you will get when you fire a weapon outside. It's just ridiculous. I can't believe they're trying to drop that line. That's what we have today. Thank you so much for tuning in. TowerGate Day 355. I'll be back tomorrow as more stuff hits the fan. Thank you for tuning in. You guys be well. See you.